Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to this quick tutorial on how to set up a fully functional development environment on Linux. Welcome again. So what is a development environment? If you're a developer and you have a Linux machine and you're wondering why you should care, it's basically a simulation or like the configuration of a server, a fully functional server on your local machine. So whenever you need to develop an application in PHP, Ruby, or whatever other scripting language you're gonna use, it's better to develop this application first on your machine, on your computer, instead of constantly pushing, constantly uploading files on a remote server, a server online, in order to test your application. Setting up a local server is necessary for specific languages that need a server in order to run. If you're just building a front-end application like a static HTML website with CSS and JavaScript, you don't really need a local server set up for your machine. You can do it simply by opening the HTML file on your browser. But if you're developing an application that uses PHP or a connection to a database like MySql, you need a server running on your machine. And Linux is the perfect place to start because Linux actually comes with a server built-in inside the system. Like the default configuration of Linux, it's perfect for a local environment. In fact, if you ever had the experience of buying or purchasing a server online, you will most likely notice that you have the option to choose what type of machine you can set up, and 99% of the times that machine is a Linux machine, most likely running Ubuntu or another flavor, another distribution of Linux. So first of all, what we're gonna set up on our machine is a LAMP stack. I don't know if you ever heard about this word LAMP, but it's just a fancy way of saying a fully functional server that runs MySql and PHP. In fact, LAMP stands for Linux operating system, Apache, A, M, MySql, that is the database, and P is PHP. A LAMP stack is the default type of software bundle that is necessary in order to run a web server. And after installing your Linux operating system, whatever choice of operating system, we are already 50% done basically, because we already have the L, our Linux, and the A, our Apache server. To test if your Linux installation has an Apache server running, you can simply open a new browser tab and type localhost. By default, the localhost of a new Linux installation should point directly to your Apache welcome screen or something like that, that specify that you're actually running Apache 2, currently on Ubuntu. It works, that's perfect, and a bunch of configuration examples. So let's access the terminal. First, we want to check if we actually have Apache and if it's running. To check if we have Apache, we can simply write which Apache 2, and if we don't get any error and we get the actual directory of Apache, it means that Apache is actually installed on our machine. To check the status of Apache, we can simply type sudo service, that Apache is a service, Apache 2 status. And it's gonna ask for our root password, and that's perfect. Here we have a quick report of the status of our server, and it's green, it's active and running, and it's simulating a bunch of HTTP address, and it's taking care of a bunch of local hosts. All good. If you get an answer that your Apache server is not running and the activation status it's written like deactivated or disabled or like not running, you can simply fix this issue by typing sudo service apache start. The other thing that we want to check is we want to check how it's possible that automatically our system, every time we type localhost in our bar, it's going to our Apache folder and it's pointing to our local environment. It's not pointing to Google or another server, because if I type something in the search bar, it goes directly to Google and does a research based on something, on the word that I wrote that I also misspelled. But why, when I type localhost, it doesn't go to Google but goes to Apache? This is because Apache handles these requests in unique URL thanks to a hosts file. And to check our hosts file, we can open it in Sublime and check the configuration. To open it in Sublime through the terminal, I'm gonna type subl to call Sublime, and then I'm saying that / from the etc folder / host file, open this in Sublime, hit enter. We have here a list of names with a specific IP address. This 127.0.0.1 is the local host, the local IP address of our machine, or a simulation, or so like something that doesn't really exist online. It's an IP address that is used only for local machines. So every time we want to set up something that points to our local Apache server, we can write it here. So for example, if I want that every time I type like test.dev and I hit enter, this test.dev should point to my Apache installation instead of trying to reach a website called test.dev that doesn't exist. Let's do it. Inside our host file, let's just write a space and write test.dev. Some users likes to repeat this row and just having one single address per row. It doesn't really matter. You can do both. It's a sort of like type of organization. If you want to keep your host file cleaner, you can write everything in line. It doesn't really matter. But let's save this file. We're gonna get prompt with a password confirmation. And if we try to access the test.dev, of course, because we specify that specific host, that specific URL to point to our local host, automatically now is going to our Apache installation. And that's perfect. It's not trying to access a non-existing URL on the internet, but it's pointing to our local file. So at this point, what we have to do, we have to connect this local IP address, this local address that we set up in our hosts file, to an actual folder in our server, so we can actually simulate how a website works, an IP address that points to a physical folder inside a server. If we notice here in the Apache presentation screen of Ubuntu, we know that our server folder is located here at the var www html and blah blah, all the other things. But we know that our Apache server installed in Ubuntu is automatically grabbing all the stuff, like all the folders and files that are set up and configured inside this location. So that's where we have to go. If we want to check where this location is and what's inside, we can simply open our file manager and holding Alt key and then hitting up arrow, we're gonna navigate up a couple of times to reach the root folder of our installation. And here you will notice we have the var and then www. Here we have the HTML folder that is the default one that goes inside this presentation of Apache, and we have the index.html. That's perfect. So this is the location where we have to create all the folders related to our local website. So in my case, I want to create a folder called test. If you notice, if you right click and try to create a new folder, you can't, because this folder, this Apache var folder, is protected under root access. So if you're not logged as an administrator, as a root, you cannot create any folder. We're gonna solve this issue in just a moment, but as a suggestion, you shouldn't create folders or files or anything else directly inside the file manager. You should do it, especially during the first configuration, you should do everything through terminal. And that's what we're gonna do. Let's switch back to our terminal and let's create a new folder for our test.dev website. So let's say sudo to act as a root administrator, mkdir, that is the command, the bash command to create a directory, and it's shortened for make a directory. Then let's specify -p to say that we want to create also a parent directory if we need to create a parent directory. In my case, we're not going to need to create a parent directory, but if you want to create multiple directory and subdirectories, you should use the -p command. And we're going to create our directory inside the var www location, and then we can call test. Test is a new one. With the -p, we can potentially create another subfolder and call it like CSS directly. So this -p automatically is going to create for us the test and the CSS folder inside the test. We don't need to do that. We're going to create just the test folder. Press enter is we're going to get prompt to insert our administrator password. And that's perfect. If you go back into places, now we have the test folder, and awesome, we created our first folder for our new local environment. Now we have to change the permissions of this folder in order to be able to create files, write whatever we want. To change the permission, we have to change the ownership. To do that, let's type again sudo and then chown to change the ownership, and -r to make it recursive, so it's going to include whatever other folder is going to be created, folder and file is going to be created inside this main folder, will automatically get the permission and the ownership of this main folder that we're setting right now. I want to set the permission and the ownership to myself, both group and user. To do that without checking what's my username and how do I write it properly and blah blah blah, we can simply write the variable, the global variable $user for the group, and then $user for the owner. Automatically the system will grab this global variable and we use our name, that in my case for my computer is alecad, and it's gonna associate the ownership and the group to those files that I'm gonna specify to alecad myself. So let's specify that I want to change the ownership to the folder var www test. Perfect. Then the last thing that we have to do for this part is change the permission of the var www, that by default this folder is not readable, is not globally readable and accessible. Let's change it by writing again sudo chmod to modify the permission, and again -r to be recursive, and then let's specify permission 755 to make it readable and not writable, only readable, to the global folder www. Perfect. Now if we go back here and we access the test, we right click, we notice that we can create a new folder, we can create a new file, we can do pretty much everything, because now this folder, if we access the properties and we check the permissions, belongs to us as a user, and we can access all the files. So that's perfect, that's what we wanted. At this point, just for the sake of this tutorial and just create a boilerplate, let's create a new file called index.php by saying touch inside the var www test the index.php, and then let's open in Sublime this file that we just created. Of course is empty. Let's open the PHP tags and let's write echo PHP info. Save it. That's perfect. We can close this file. We don't need it anymore. Now we have our server with the test folder and the index.php file that we just created. But if we refresh the test.dev, of course, it's gonna always go to this default Apache introduction file, because we didn't actually hook our IP address to the actual folder in our Apache server. That's where a virtual host comes in handy, because in that way we can connect the document root, the document directory, to the actual server directory and simulate the server directory to have a server name that in our case is going to be test.dev. So let's do it. To create a virtual host in Apache is really simple, and I'm going to show you where the virtual hosts are in Apache. So if we go back in our root folder and we access our etc folder, we are gonna see Apache 2, that it's our server installed on our machine. We access it here and we access the sites available. You're gonna notice we have a folder, we have a file called 000-default. If we open, we're gonna notice that pretty much all the lines are commented out. And the only lines that are not are the one referring to the document root, that is the default one, the www.html folder. These boilerplate type of file, it's necessary for us. We're gonna use it to specify all our virtual host in order to hook the test.dev URL to the actual test folder that we created in our www Apache folder. As a small recommendation, never edit files that are inside the sites enabled. Sites enabled is a folder that it's managed by Apache and automatically populated or deleted or managed independently by Apache with some scripts. You don't need to edit or manually touch whatever is inside the sites enabled. Every time you need to create a virtual host, always and only edit files and create files inside the sites available folder. Don't get confused, otherwise you risk to break your Apache installation, and we don't want to do that. Let's access back our terminal and let's duplicate that default.conf file that we just saw. So we're gonna use the sudo command again, and then cp, that stands for copy. We're gonna copy the etc apache 2 / sites available / the 0, and if we hit tab, automatically the system will recognize the file and will populate it for us with autocomplete, and we're gonna duplicate it in the same location. So let's repeat the etc apache 2 and then the sites available, and then we need to specify the name of the file with the same extension of our virtual host that we want to use, our website. So in my case, it's going to be test.dev and then .conf, because it's a config file. So the name of the file, as always has to resemble and has to be identical to the name of the URL that you're gonna use for this site, for this virtual host. Let's hit enter, and automatically we have that duplicated. We can check if we go back inside sites available, we have the test.dev config. Now we need to edit it. In order to edit it, we need to access as sudo, or we can use Sublime and get prompt with confirmation every time we save it. So let's hit arrow up to get our previous entry, and here we can just simply type Sublime, hit enter, and that's perfect. Here we can pretty much remove all these comments that are not necessary. Let's leave here. We can remove pretty much everything. Actually, let's remove everything and let's manually write what we need. Be sure that you're editing the test.dev conf and not the default one, because we don't want to touch the default one. We don't want to risk to break it. So first we need to specify a server admin. And usually the server admin resembles the type of file or the type of website that we're editing. So let's change it to something, for example, admin at test.dev. Of course, on a real case scenario, this would be the actual email address of the server admin. So you can hook every time there's a server issue to send an email to the server admin, and it's gonna get the logs, the reports, and all the errors. For now, because we are on a local environment, we don't need to specify a real email, but you can change it and doing whatever you want. We need to change the server name to the URL that we want to use, and that's where we need to specify test.dev. And then the document root is where we created our folder where our website and the files of our website are gonna be. So in my case, are inside var www test. That's perfect. Then we can specify a bunch of extra information if you want that are most likely important if you want to track error and custom logs. So we can specify the dollar and then the curly brackets, Apache log dir, that is the global variable where all our logs are going to be saved inside our Apache server, and we're going to store everything inside error.log, and then we can duplicate this and change this to custom log, and instead of error log we're gonna change it to access.log, and we're gonna specify that this file has to be combined. These are kind of default things that you don't need, like you just leave it here. You don't really need to edit it. It's just like default configuration of an Apache server, so that's perfect. And this is the bare minimum. There are many other options that we're gonna check in a minute. We're gonna see all the other options in a bit, but this is the bare minimum to have a fully functional virtual host. So now we can save this file. We're gonna get prompt to insert our administration password. That's perfect. Now we can close this, and in order to enable and activate this file, we need to use a bash script for Apache that automatically does that for us. And to do that, we need to type again sudo, then a2n site, that means Apache 2 enabled site, and we need to specify the file that we just created, test.dev.conf. We don't need to enter the entire root because automatically this script is gonna look for the file inside the sites available, because it's the only location where you should have this type of configuration file in order to enable. So let's hit enter. And now the site test.dev is available and activated. If we check back in our folder in the Apache 2 and we access the sites enabled, you're gonna notice we have a symlink, a file that it's a link that points to our test.conf. That's why you don't ever have to touch the sites enable folder, because automatically these folders is managed by that script to activate and deactivate all the sites that are inside the sites available folder. Now, in order to complete, we need to restart or reload Apache with this script. So let's copy this script, let's paste it here, and let's hit enter. We're gonna get prompt with the administration password. Apache has been reloaded. Let's go back in our server, let's go back in our browser, let's refresh test.dev, and we have the PHP info file. That's perfect. If we don't get PHP here, if we don't get anything with the info.php, it means that you don't have PHP installed inside your machine. To install PHP in your machine, first you need to check if you have it. So just type php-v. If you don't have it, you can simply type sudo apt get install php 7.0. That is the current version of PHP available, and I strongly suggest you to use the apt package manager. And some users like to use Homebrew or Linux Brew, that is the derivation of Homebrew for Linux, to get the latest repositories or like the latest packages. But if you don't really need to do it, you can totally have a stable version of PHP or a stable version of whatever package you want to use through the official and built-in package manager of Linux, that is apt. So now our virtual host is up and we can manage all the files through our root folder var www test. This is our test file, but what I don't like is that I don't want to, every time I need to edit these folders, I need to edit this file, or I'm working on this website, I need to access the root var www and test. I want to create a symlink to my home directory site and I have here the www. So I know that if I access here, I'm gonna go directly inside Apache, and every time I create a folder there or something, it means that I can set up a new virtual host, a new website, and I can keep everything better organized and better separated. So let's do it, of course, through terminal. So in order to create a symlink through the terminal, we need to type ln space -s to create a symlink, point to the folder that we want to link and we want to kind of duplicate and copy and generate the symlink. That in my case is var/www, and then the destination folder that in my case is my home directory, my name, that is the user that owns this computer, and then the folder sites, and then the name of the link that is going to be www. Let's hit enter. Perfect. Let's go back in our directory. Let's go back in our home directory, sites, and then I have the www that if I double click, I'm gonna access directly to my test folder or my HTML folder or whatever. I'm gonna directly get redirected to the location where my server actually is. So this is really handy, and of course, because it's a root folder, it's a protected one, we're gonna have this icon. You can change the icon if you want, but it doesn't really matter. It's just like a really handy quick link to go into your server. So this is our entire workflow to manually set up a local server on Linux through Apache, but of course it's kind of convoluted. I mean, if I don't explain anything and I just simply type it, it's really easy and really quick to use it. But if you need to create a lot of sites constantly and you need to generate like once a week a new website, you need to manage multiple websites, it gets kind of tedious, especially, or even if you create one local host, one virtual host, then a couple of months pass before you need to create another one and you completely forgot all the workflow and everything and what you have to do. It's kind of like tedious. So we need a sort of automation. That's where a super nifty script, a shell script that I found, comes in handy. If you access my GitHub repository to Alecad and virtual host, I forked shell script created by this user Rover Wire that created this super nifty shell script. I forked it because there was a small issue in one of the files when it was generating the IP address in the host file. I fixed it, I pushed it, so now we can quickly use it. You can just simply download the virtualhost.shell file.sh file and then move into your bin folder in order to use it globally. So let's do it. Let's open this file, let's click it to raw, and then let's simply save it inside our home directory. Save. Now, based on the instruction, we need to change the chmod to be executable. So we need to specify +x to the virtual host sh. That's what we're gonna do. So let's write chmod +x to be executable, and then virtualhost.sh, that is the file that I just downloaded in my home directory. Let's hit enter. Perfect. Now we have to copy paste this into our user local bin and rename it into virtual host. So we remove the sh extension and we don't need to type it every time we want to execute this command. So let's do it. Let's copy this. Let's access our terminal. Let's paste it here and let's change the initial location. Our virtual host is here, and done. Now we have access to a bunch of super nifty quick script that will help us to automatically generate everything we did manually by itself. So we need to specify just a couple of options and automatically is going to pre-populate everything for us. And the script that we can use is simply sudo, because we need to access it through a root. Virtual host, we have the option to create or delete a new domain and specify the host directory that it's optional. So for example, if I want to create a dev site for my AWPS WordPress installation, I can simply use the script to say sudo virtualhost create awps.dev, and then I want the folder to be called AWPS and hit enter. Done. If we go back up. There you go, that we are inside our folder. And if we check what the script did, basically created a new virtual host, added our host to the etc host file, and reloaded Apache for us. And now we have everything here. So we can check what happened. If we go inside our folders, inside our www, we're gonna see that now we have the AWPS, and automatically the scripts generate a PHP info file that if we access it here, we can check everything works, that's perfect. Plus, automatically the system created for us inside all those Apache folder, etc Apache 2 sites available, created the AWPS dev.conf that if we open, you will notice here we have way more options than we had before. And this is perfect because all these options are important for us. The allow, override all of the directory, and the follow symlinks, multi-views, all these options, and require all granted will automatically set up the virtual host to accept, for example, permalinks, or allow us to upload files to the server, for example, through the media uploader of WordPress, and generated also for us a unique file to handle all the error and access logs instead of us having one single file that takes care of all our websites. So this script is amazing. It's really fast, it's quick, as you notice, and if you don't want this site anymore, like for example, you worked on it and it's a really whole website, you want to clean your server, you want to delete it, you can reuse the same exact code, that is sudo virtual host, but instead of create, we can write delete, and then let's delete the local host, and let's delete the Apache folder. It's going to ask for confirmation to delete the root directory, and let's specify yes. Perfect. Now if we go back up and we refresh again, the site, it doesn't work anymore. If we access the folders here, inside the sites available, we don't have anymore the AWPS, inside the sites enable either. If we go back in our root, var www AWPS doesn't exist anymore. Of course, our symlink inside sites, it's updated as well. That's perfect. The last thing that we want to do, we need to create a database, because a server without a database is kind of useless. Nowadays, all the applications like WordPress, they need a database. So first of all, we need to install MySql. To install MySql is really easy. First, let's clear a little bit this terminal, and let's say sudo apt get install MySql-server. Let's hit enter, and let's say yes. Automatically the apt package manager is gonna download all the core files of MySql in order for us to configure and set it up on our local machine. So it's gonna take a little bit, and then at the end we're gonna get prompt to set up automatically and configure. So I usually get admin because root and admin are like kind of okay, are the same, so repeat the password just in case, and then hit enter, and automatically it's gonna get configured for us. Perfect. Now to check if our MySql server is actually running, we can simply type systemctl, that is a system controller, check the status of our MySql service. And of course, we're gonna get a positive confirmation it is active and running, is inside our admin location, MySql-d. That's perfect. Now what we can do, we can potentially use MySql through the terminal, but it's not really intuitive. And after working many years with macOS, I'm used to SQL Pro. Unfortunately, SQL Pro doesn't exist for Linux, but there's a database manager that it's available, and it's really nifty, that it's called dbeaver. It's a free and universal SQL client. It's open source and it's really cool. So let's download it. And of course, it's multi-platform, that it's amazing. Let's download the Debian package 64-bit. And in order to launch it, we need to run the package installation through the terminal. So let's copy the name of this file. And let's type, as for the instruction, run sudo dpkg dbeaver and then the name .dev. So let's type this stuff. So let's run sudo dpkg, then the location of our file that it's inside our downloads folder, and then the name of the file with the extension .deb, and let's hit enter. Perfect. Now the next step is to simply execute dbeaver or simply click on dbeaver. Wonderful. So that new connection type, let's go down to MySql and next. Localhost port is perfect. We don't have a database. Username is root, the password is admin, and local user client is inside user. Next. We don't have SSH access. We don't have SSL. Test the connection. Download driver files. We are missing driver though. That's perfect. Let's do it. Connected. Awesome. Test connection. Connected. Success. Everything works. And finish. Perfect. Now if we double click, we can access our MySql local installation and do everything that we usually do in a regular database installation. So now here we can create a new database, for example, a database for WordPress, a Laravel, for Drupal, whatever installation you want. You can always access it through the root, and perfect. We have everything that we need to use our machine to develop all the web applications that we want. So it's pretty much it for this video. As you notice, probably this whole system kind of sounds complicated or convoluted, but just because I was explaining step by step what I was doing while I was installing and configuring all the things, now that you set it up for the first time and you have that script, it's just super quick and easy and super automated. Even doing it manually would take you just a couple of minutes, because you don't have to stop every time to explain to understand what command is. You already have those commands, and that's perfect. By using the script, the virtual host shell script, it's going to help you a lot to speed up this entire process of setting up a new virtual host and automatically having a new folder generated for you in your Apache installation. So it's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want, you can check the support me page on my website to see all different ways and methods to support me, support my channel, and help me to do better videos and better tutorials for you. Thank you again, guys, and until the next lesson, as usual, happy coding!